What will be illegal in 100 years that is legal now? The collection and selling of personal data for profit or political gain. I'm really hoping it doesn't take 100 years. If anything, this will just get more and more legal. I'm hoping it comes with the ability of individuals to control and profit from their own data in the process via regulated exchanges. I can't remember what the term is, but when companies purposely design phones and other electronics so that they stop working after a few years, forcing you to buy a new one. Planned obsolescence, if I remember correctly. There's two. Planned obsolescence is when something is designed to break after a certain period in order to increase sales. The second is perceived obsolescence, where a company utilized marketing to create the perception that something which is perfectly functional is outdated and needs to be replaced. Child marriage. But then the fact that it's still legal now in some places, including certain US states, makes me think that's too much to hope for. I'm too scared to Google that. Basically, in a number of states, if you get the parents' permission, you can marry someone underaged. The reasoning, I believe, is that it's supposed to allow teenagers in extraordinary circumstances, teen pregnancy, to get married as part of that really outdated idea that a baby out of wedlock is shameful. The practical and disturbingly more often applied function is that an adult can marry someone under 18 if they have the parents' permission. To make matters worse, when this happens, guardianship of the child then passes to their adult partner, which means all of their legal rights are routed through someone who, by the nature of that arrangement, has a vested interest in raping them. They can't get a divorce until they turn 18, because until then it would require the permission of their legal guardian, the person who explicitly does not want to let them go. Using cash or any other way to interchange possessions for goods or services that cannot be tracked and taxed by the government. This is one of the ones that really scares me. 100 years from now, the concept of currency will probably not exist. There may be some sort of direct resource value that is an exact measurement of how much resources are being used, though. It's already happening in many places. India recently took a big step towards this. I'm sure China is doing something similar too. Nothing gets Winnie the Pooh off like more surveillance and control. But crime and money laundering go hand in hand with cash. Anonymously posting online. Everyone will still have access to the internet and forums, but that access will be tied inextricably to your identity. No more bullshit comments from Camaro Guy 69 and shit like that. Every comment, every post that anyone makes anywhere will be tied to their actual name and personal identifier. That is really damn scary. This can basically be achieved already. I think most people, even the more fringe communities like Redditors, truly underestimate the depth of surveillance and big data. Why do you reckon the enormous companies like Amazon, Google, Facebook and Apple all focus heavily on ad services, the cloud and servers? They're all cross-platform things that allow for the combining of data to generate a profile. Plastic straws. Plastic is a very good versatile product. It's the one-time use that's the problem. And dumping it in the ocean where it breaks apart into microscopic particles that become part of the food chain. Moving to hemp plastic would solve 51% of the current problems. The other 49% is getting rid of what's already polluting. Rather oil-derived non-degradable plastics. There are already technologies to produce bioplastics, so not all plastics are bad. Having kids if you're not financially solvent. How are they going to enforce this? Forced abortions? Forced vasectomy. They freeze your sperm beforehand, and you have to buy it back if you want a kid. I could imagine government-funded birth control everyone basically gets for free, and maybe even having to qualify before getting off it, like taking a test or talking with a consultant. Of course, this would be a great moral problem, so it would probably be voluntary at first, but I reckon a lot of people would do it. In 100 years it could even be mandatory. There will maybe be a safer and better, risk-free method for birth control, essentially preventing the problem before it occurs. I think a lot of our pharmaceutical drugs will be seen as barbaric and basically just all narcotics in 100 years, when we know more about the mechanisms of the brain, and we get better at therapeutic treatments. Man, I hear this all the time, but I think it's important to realize the progress the medical community has made in even the past 10 to 20 years, let alone 100 plus years. Like, yeah, it's easy to look at some treatments today and the significant side effects they have, but the alternative is often far worse and or far less effective. That's not to say improvements can't be made. Quite the opposite, we can always improve. But to say that most of our pharmaceuticals will be seen as barbaric or be outlawed, I think, is a little extreme. Butchering animals and eating them. Hopefully so. Although I eat meat, I cannot deny that factory farming can be cruel to animals. If lab-grown meat were price competitive with slaughtered meat, I think butchering would be illegal. Okay, but what about my chickens in my backyard? I can no longer eat them because of factory farms. If lab-grown meat outcompetes factory farms, factory farmed animals will naturally stop being used. We don't need a law making it illegal to butcher an animal. What about when I go fishing? Am I no longer allowed to cook the fish I catch? I think coffee will ultimately end up regulated like alcohol or cigarettes, on account of how too much of it can have on the body. Things like marijuana or alcohol and even sex can, for some people, become mentally addictive. The person feels like they need it, but they won't suffer physically without it. However, things like cigarettes, caffeine, opiates, etc. are physically addictive, where even if you want to stop you can still be dragged back to it because of adverse physical effects. Some people report feeling like they have the flu when trying to quit smoking. Some people report shakiness and other symptoms when trying to remove caffeine from their diet. Physical addictions are, in general, much more difficult to overcome, which is why I think it's important to talk about the addictiveness of caffeine, as it can become a physical addiction. Driving a personal car or vehicle long distances every day to work and back. Every first world country is covered in cars and trucks. Cities are gridlocked worldwide. If you really think it through, it really is a ludicrous setup we have now where people live in suburbs of cities and work somewhere far away. I work with about 10 people at my job. The person who lives closest to work lives 25 kilometers away. The furthest away drives over 100 kilometers one way to work each and every day. There is a big push in the automotive industry right now to move towards electric cars. The focus so far has been that gasoline and diesel vehicles are causing too much pollution, and that electric cars would alleviate this pollution issue. 100 years from now we'll have an entirely different attitude toward raw materials, waste, and pollution. Future generations will look back at us like we were Neanderthals, and will call this era the wasted years. We knew damn well that our consumption was destroying the atmosphere and ecosystems, but did nothing to change that, because business. Just like we look back at the pollution of the industrial age, or look back upon ancient medical practices as idiotic, future generations will feel the same way about the people we are today. Being a parent without any qualification. I would like to see a qualification to be a parent, whether that includes a mandatory parenting class or something akin to getting a driver's license. It would save a lot of people a lot of suffering, and could be an effective measure at keeping young kids away from crime. With the rise of 3D printers, there's going to be a lot of restrictions on what we are allowed to print. There's really no way to enforce this. Anyone can build a 3D printer from readily available, cheap Chinese parts, design whatever they like, and print it. The government can create laws that restrict what I sell, but there's no way to physically restrict production. It might be difficult to prevent you from 3D printing something illegal, but if they caught you with a thing that was illegally 3D printed, that might be easier to prosecute. In the early stages of 3D printers way back when, I knew a guy who designed a fully functional 3D printable gun, and posted the design online. Let's just say the FBI was involved. Declawing of cats in the United States. Hopefully, a lot of vets already won't do it. A lot of people won't get their cats declawed when they find out that the vet cuts off the cat's finger at the last knuckle. I always thought that they removed the nail in nail bed. Rough, yes, but nowhere near as traumatic as removing the last finger bone. Declawing cats will disappear largely on its own before then, with the law used to finish the practice off. There's actually a lot of places now that make you sign a contract when you buy or adopt a cat that you won't get them declawed, and if you do, the shelter can take the cat and give it to a different home. There are approved ways and approved reasons to declaw cats. Owners need to understand that it is an amputation procedure and should only be used as a last resort. Veterinary medicine has advanced so far. We actually declawed a cat with a laser on one of my rotations in veterinary school, under anesthesia and with tons of pain medication and management protocols for the owner, when we sent her home. Fossil fuel powered machines. Fossil fuel powered machines will be around for a while. The realistic expectation and goal should be replacing what can be replaced, as soon as it can be replaced. Personal cars should go electric soon. Homeowners should change to electric appliances and equipment, but commercial will remain gas powered until battery life equals tanker fuel life and batteries are cheaper and recharge in minutes. Cruise ships need to go away. At the current levels of technology, a lot of fossil fueled engines can be replaced, but a lot cannot. In 100 years, there will be fossil fueled engines, but in specialized places. 1,000 years, possibly, but not 100. Sure, many people will have an electric car in 100 years, But electric transoceanic shipping, no way. Driving a car by yourself in traffic without the autopilot. Yeah, I see driving becoming a skill that only people in certain jobs learn, and it also being more like horse riding is today. Manual driving will basically be outlawed on all public streets. It will start with major roads requiring drivers to set their cars to auto drive. More and more streets will switch over until there basically won't be any roads you will be allowed to manually drive on. Then commercial car manufacturers will start phasing out manual driving features until there is no more driving. Manual cars will still be necessary for commercial, military, and public works, but those most likely won't be on private roads, and not by untrained civilians. Think of manually driving in the future as like horses are now. For most people, it is a recreational activity done in specially designated areas. It's been proven that, if every vehicle was autonomous, then it would be significantly safer to be in a vehicle. As someone who has worked with computers, I trust computers only as far as I can throw them. Self-driving cars won't be infallible. What happens if the car's computer system crashes? Self-driving cars will have a manual override system, and people will have to know how to guide it once they trigger it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a comment down below. You can support the channel by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and clicking the bell icon to receive a notification when new videos are released. And see you next time.